Welcome. Thank you so much, Gail, for being part of the Ambition Summit.
A pleasure.
And we'll just jump straight in, if that's all right with you. Okay, so can you just tell me a little bit about when you first knew that this was what you wanted to do and your story around that?
Sure. So I think I was born sort of one of life's organizers. So, even as a kid, I wanted to help people get organized, even if that meant accumulating things to organize, if that makes sense. And any of the hats that I've worn over the whether that was working as a fundraiser for culture, or whether that was working as a producer, working with big brands, or whether that was working as a producer for London 2012, or indeed most recently as a coach, a mentor, and a minister. Essentially, the thing that runs through all of those is they are about supporting people to organize who they are, to know who they really are, and to dust out the closet of them, as it were, and to fully wear the flesh of who that individual is, or who that brand is, or who that business is. So, for me, I think it's essentially, I've always been able to see the truth of people, situations, and environments, and to really be able to help people bin their BS essentially as well, and call that out, and just a really down to earth, very Scottish, matter way, which is not about being offensive, but it's just kind of been like, hey, did you notice that way you were just talking about that situation? And I just wonder, is that true? Is that really true, or is that what was going on before, and maybe something is different now? And as I progress into this next chapter, there's now lots of different tools to work with. So there's the esoteric and spiritual tools, for example, so that does include elements such as meditation, visualization, journeying. But then there's also very traditional business coaching, which is kind of getting into the crux of a message and what's happening in there. And then there's ultimately as well just there's the human heart to brain cohesion, body language, neuroscience, which supports the development of all of our patterns essentially, and we can often think of patterns as a very derogatory element that we live with, but actually it's all data. So for me as well, I feel like I organize the data of humans, and then I can help them see a way through so that they can connect to their greatness, their divine greatness, their potential that lives in all of us, to really be here and live a very, very full life.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the way that you just describe patterns there, because it's so interesting that patterns are, as you say, normally something that we don't want to, we don't want these patterns. We don't want them. We want to break them. But seeing them as information and data is such a great way of looking at it.
Well, we dress ourselves and fill our homes with all sorts of patterns, this season's style, what's on the high street, who's wearing what, that they're all patterns too, and patterns of nature, the Fibonacci spiral, the mathematics of what exists in nature. We can't deny that there essentially is a signature of all of us. And once we understand that signature, and if we think about, I don't know about you, but certainly I used to practice my signature a lot as a kid. It was really important. And then, when I was getting married, then obviously I had to practice a new signature. And so, we practice signatures all the time unconsciously, but when we begin to practice the signature of us consciously, then we can really tap into the blueprint of who we are, and that's that room that hosts our greatness, our potential.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. And so how long have you been in your current business?
So current business, in the formation that it stands at the moment, I would say, I would say 3 years, 3 to 4 years. The reason I'm sort of hesitant around that is I'm actually about to close the first business. So Ducky Productions, Producers of Change. So I opened Ducky, or set Ducky up probably, I think it was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2014. It's been an incredible, what I think of as in tech terms, we would call it a sandbox. We'd call it sandboxing. It's basically, it is a place to play, a place to make mistakes. Often in entrepreneurialism, particularly with what we're seeing these days, is that people think it's failure if that business doesn't work, whereas actually, Google, for example, has a room, a building, probably a planet full of stuff that doesn't work, and they only know what works because of what doesn't work, essentially. So for me, it's a real pleasure to be handing in the last set of corporate accounts for that business, and then it can conclude its business, and then the next iteration, will come out. But essentially, its purpose, my business's purpose as a producer of change, is exactly that. It's changing you. It's again changing the culture of the team that you're working with. It's changing policy at a government level. It's changing perception of what's happening in amongst us in and of the world. So, that has taken various iterations. It does cover a wide breadth of elements. But as I've grown and matured and understood, so too has the soul of the business, because I'm the custodian of the business. I'm not the business. And that's, I would say, also an area of confusion with young businesses, is that entrepreneurs often think it's like, it's me, it's all about me, I'm the brand, I'm this, I'm that. And there's partly truth in that. We are the face, but also, sitting thinking at CEO level as opposed to entrepreneur or freelance level has got a really different energy to it. And so part of what I've understood as well is that there are times, if my business chart, for example, as it stands at the moment of 4 years, then I've promoted myself consistently, like across 4 years, so I started as the entrepreneur. Now it's very much being founder, CEO. However, there are times that I'm commissioned out as a practitioner. And so that's a different standpoint. So I'm not sitting, say, at the board of a charity as a practitioner. I'm sitting there as Gail Lovestock, founder of. Equally, when I'm delivering meditation or a journey or a workshop, that could be at practitioner level, or it could be an influencer at global level, but not the smaller level. So I think, where the business is at is one business is concluding, another company is opening. It's really exciting, and I'll probably do that, well, for the rest of my life. But my instinct with where I'm at is actually kind of what's emerging is going to be long-term sustainable, but it will have a variety of sandboxes in it to play in.
I love that analogy. And congratulations on the end of the cycle of your previous business. So important to celebrate that, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And congratulations on the start of your new form that you're going to be working in. So I guess my next question, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started? I'm interested to hear how you're going to answer this, because it seems like your business has evolved so much over your lifetime.
It's such a good question. So my answer for today, this is very much probably subject to change. What do I wish I'd known? I wish I'd known about the idea of sandboxing when I started. I didn't realize that existed, and I didn't realize it was a necessary part of business development. So I really wish I'd understood the idea that essentially, there is sandboxing, and I also would have really loved to have understood the concept of prototyping or different versions. So where I'm at now, for example, is I'm about to go into a season of prototyping. That's what I'm calling it. So I'm going into a lab. I'm experimenting with 4 years of data, and I'm looking at what works and what doesn't work. And then I'm allowing my instinct to take 1 or 2 prototypes on a little adventure of their own, knowing solidly that versions 75, 650 and 811 are solid, and work. So I think there's this idea, in certain terms we'd call it perfectionism, but it's misconstrued, it's misunderstood within the relatively new and emerging coaching industry in particular. Perfectionism is an element of wanting to get things right, but without testing, without prototyping, without exploring, getting feedback, working with data sets. And a data set might simply be 20 people that you know, and saying to them, I've developed this new product, offer, thing. I feel it's really good based on this, this, and this. Can I send it to you, and will you give me some feedback? That's a data set, you know. And so again, I had started working with sort of data sets and information gathering quite early on, because I also have a background in fundraising and research, to the tune of raising almost 10 million for culture, and as part of London 2012. So one of the kind of third pillar that I also wish I'd known earlier on was that it was okay to bring all of my parts together. So for example, you know, sometimes if you're in traditional employment and you want to go for that next job, like you fire everything that you can in that application form, don't you? Or in that CV, or in your first website, you want absolutely everything in there. But what can also sometimes happen is that we think, oh, that part of me is not relevant anymore. That project that I did 10 years ago doesn't mean anything anymore. Or that thing I did 4 years ago doesn't really have any standing. It does. It does, you know, and I talk about that like aligning the Russian dolls. So we bring all of our little parts all back together. So for me, you know, kind of just, those are a few of the things that I wish I'd known, that sandboxing existed, and it's a necessary part of the evolution of a business and a brand that wants to be together. For example, Victoria Beckham celebrating 10 years of her label. What she was doing 10 years ago, she's not doing that in the cutting room anymore. You know, it's like she's moved on and she's moved through. She was looking for longevity. She understood longevity, and she wanted to give British fashion something that it didn't have. She was always very clear about that. You know, and prototyping is like pattern cutting in style and in fashion. You'll try various different ways. We'll also try various different patterns and colors. And then bringing all of the parts together, being able to align and think, oh, I could draw on that, I could draw on that. That's very useful. And then the last two little points with that are drawing on your, from an 80s point of view, I refer to it as the Rolodex. Like, never lose your contacts from the different industries that you've worked in, because you might think you're working in a different industry in a different way, but we can never assume what other people are thinking or are involved in. So, you know, keep your people up to date, basically. And that's not necessarily through a mailing list, and it's not necessarily through social media, it's through relationships. And then the final, and probably one of the, well, if not the most necessary piece of advice, is get a really good accountant from the get-go. Somebody that will support you with bookkeeping, and somebody that will support you with accounts, and do the research on that, because myself included, and many, many other businesses are burned constantly by negligent accountants. So do the research, get in touch with somebody, and make sure make sure that business protocol is in place, because it will save tears and tantrums, it will save money. It's you showing up and being serious about your business from the get-go. And again, it's the difference between entrepreneur, freelancer, and moving towards understanding that your name's above the door, basically. This is your business, so take it seriously as well.
Yes, such great advice there. Thank you, Gail. And I think it is one of those things that people don't necessarily think about when they first start their businesses, and they feel like they're so small that it's not necessary. But so that's great to hear. And yeah, I love the concept of sandboxing and prototyping. It's really interesting to take the idea of a prototype, which everyone understands in a physical product term, and apply that to a service-based business. So
Yeah.
that's a really interesting concept for me.
Yeah, and also versions, again, Apple are great at this, right? We're not still holding the first iPhone version
Yes.
one. Oh, that we were. Oh, that it lasted. Oh, that the battery lasted, But they're, version one, version two, version three. It's this idea also that people kind of think in service-based industry, service-based business, we think we have to offer new services all the time. I would suggest offer better. It can be a service that you're offering. For example, afternoon tea, right? Afternoon tea at Claridge's is one of the best afternoon teas in the world. Afternoon tea at your local cafe, you'll have a great time, but it will be of a different standard. To be honest, it could be better. It depends who's making the scones. But the thing is, what each of them do is they finesse so it has their own signature. It's
Yes.
not like anybody said, I offered afternoon tea 8 years ago, we should stop doing that. But they get better ingredients, they get different plates, they add to, so version again 1055 is the best that they can offer on the day that they're in. So I'd offer, particularly with new businesses, around service level delivery, like, don't think of new, think of better, think of improvement, think of finesse, think of maturing, professionalizing. Like, your customers grow with you as you grow, so they need to understand what's happening in the back of house. They love knowing that this is coming up with something new. We're all a bit suspicious of that now. Whereas, I've taken all of this feedback from X amount of users. Here's the messages that are coming through. I can't wait to release the improved program. That's really interesting.
Yes, and hearing you say that and putting myself in a consumer position, that just feels so much better, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because otherwise, new is great, don't get me wrong, but new means version one over and
Yes.
over again. So you're never really allowing anything to improve. But it'd be like taking whiskey out of a barrel after the first year. It'd be terrible, but it has 12 years, and every year it's tested, or it has longer, every year it's tested, so yeah, again, from a consumer point of view, what we really want to know is we want to be able to trust the people who are asking us to invest in their service. Like, are you evidencing that I can trust you by what you're giving me, or is this some weird trend that is, these things are just bobbing about? And people want depth, even younger consumers, people who have, 18 to 25-year-olds with probably more passive income and availability for spending than a lot of 30, kind of 30 to 40-year-olds. They're really, they're really interested in self-development and in being part of something that they can be like, hey, I was there at the beginning, or I
Yeah.
got feedback on that, or that was really interesting. Like, long-term small investors are essentially, for example, what keep the third sector and the charity sector going. It's no different. It's no different in the service industry.
Yes. Very, very interesting concepts, and I think that it gives people a lot to think about in their businesses. So thank you for that. And so, have there been times where things haven't gone as expected? And I'm sensing this is going to be a big yes because of what we've talked about so far in evolving. But how do you cope when something doesn't quite go as you hoped it would?
Well, I would say expect failure is also a really, people can think, why would I expect failure? But just expect stuff to go wrong, because we can't see everything, number one. One of the examples I have is, I've got loads actually, but one of them is around, like, working with a poor accountant, and that resulted in costing me thousands of pounds, and because they were negligent, essentially. And of course, I had, to a certain extent, taken my foot off the pedal, because what happens is, again, we invest in people we think we can trust, and they're there to support our business. But an accountant, depending upon who they are, you might only hear from them once or twice a year. So for me, one of the things was I had an instinct that something was off and I didn't trust it. And then by that point, it was technically like too late in inverted commas. But where I'm at now is actually in a conversation with, say, HMRC about getting quite a large refund, but as a result of having to resubmit 3 years of accounts all over again. But also know that HMRC, you know, they are a strange sort of emblem of patriarchy and oppression on
Mhm.
one hand. Equally, being able to direct your pounds, dollars, money into something that supports our country in the way that it does is a really, really important part of business as well.
Mhm.
So knowing where your investment is going, and I'm using the word investment as opposed to cost, because I think, again, when we start out, we often were like, how much is that going to cost me? What's that going to be? Whereas if we can see it from the point of view of what's the investment, what does that leverage me, how does that help, then that can be really important. So yeah, I had some real humdingers with, in fact, two accountants were terrible. And I wish I was the only person to say that, but trust me, I'm not. I know hundreds of people and big companies who've been, you know, kind of completely kiboshed by accountants. The other thing is, I've often, in the beginning, I would kind of change my prices quite a lot for service delivery. I also did a lot for free, which is necessary to a point, but then there is a point when it's not even that it's not sustainable, it's out of integrity. It's
Mhm.
out of integrity. And so understanding that, again, there's a funny thing as entrepreneurs, particularly in the, in inverted commas, like wellness industry, or the, you know, that we are perceived as our business there, as we, it is about we the individual, our cost. And so one of the myths I had around at the early years was that I was asking people to buy me. So there was almost a little bit of a peculiar, like, almost like an ancient prostitution hangover. You know, you're asking people to pay me. This is really weird. When we can move out of that into being the custodian of the business, of the concept, of the solution that is going to make our species evolve, work better, be more awake, be more alive, and therefore the investment into that product service is this, and stick at it, even if it's a sort of bottom clenching fee, which at some points it ought to be in the maturing of the business. You know, just hold the stare, essentially. So I would just say, you know, just watch what's happening in yourself if you're moving fees around. Sometimes it can be necessary. Like, I've done a lot of prototyping, you know, which I then understood that as sandboxing, essentially, and so would think, well, this package could be this, or perhaps this product is that, or, you know, there, part of the challenge also in the wellness industry is there's no industry standard. So kind of literally everybody's making it up, like based on a shanty, what do I feel my soul is worth? And that's really, that's a big problem. It's a big problem in this industry, because it's
Mm.
just built on fantasy. It's not built on fact. It's not, you're not, you know, like, take the hours into account that it takes you to create something. You know, take the before and the after a call, take the travel, take your nutrition, take your tax 20% that you have to pay, take, you know, your insurance that you have to pay, cost a job essentially appropriately. And then, you know, also think about what what you would like as a salary. You know, work backwards when you have all of those elements covered, and then, you know, put your costs together. So then when you're asking people to invest in you and to trust you, the energy that is in the costing and the price points are legitimate. You know, they're legitimately there. You've done your research, you've
Mhm.
understood what the business needs to generate, you've looked at the costs that need to be covered, you've looked at a profit, you've looked at what you want to give to charity or your corporate responsibility if you've moved into that sphere. And it makes a huge difference to the the essence of what people feel. You know, it's it's similar, you know, it's why people go to certain coffee shops and they don't go to others. It's all to do with, again, you know, packaging, feel, sensibility, people taking responsibility. So yeah, I would say just some of the lessons and the failures. I mean, you know, are around, yeah. So accountancy, money management, for example, in terms of fees, and then also trying to follow what somebody else is doing, which has got absolutely nothing to do with me, but it looks like they're doing it really, really well. So maybe I should give that a go too, and then I might be as successful as them. But like, it doesn't work like that. You know, it's like we've always got to do our, again, our signature perfume, let that, you know, our signature scent, our signature, you know, kind of whatever it is, let that run through everything that's produced.
Yes, thank you for sharing. I think it's important for people to hear these stories around when things perhaps haven't gone quite as you hoped or quite as you expected, and especially around important things like getting the right accountant, and that, you know, that's so important. So thank you. So what practices, ways of working, systems do you have in your business that make it easier for you?
Yeah. So I use a mixture of things, from, I would say, from traditional business due to esoteric and spiritual. So on the sort of esoteric spiritual side, for example, one, I run my calendar based on numerology. So I have my whole calendar across the year has the numerology into it, which means that there are days that are really good for communications and for new relationships. Excuse me. There are days which are not good for me to be front facing and talking to people, because you're not going to get a good version of me. There are days, you know, which are absolute for invoicing, you know, and for essentially money honey days, you know, for sending things out. I also work cyclically, so with my own feminine cycle as well. So I work to my 4 seasons. And then that also means that people are getting the best version of me at the best time. So I tend not to be front facing for my winter, for example. And then I will be, but I know that I am incredibly intuitive and can smell like a little opportunistic bloodhound kind of towards like autumn. You know, I'm just like, wait, what was that idea I forgot about? Oh, let's do that. You know, so those are really core and really key parts of my foundation. I also, you know, if there's little things, for example, have an out of office, which explains what you're up to. We have this, what I think of it as revolting, and that might come across as quite strong, but I think we have this revolting kind of immediacy energy about things at times, and it puts a lot of pressure, especially if you are a single person right now, and you may wish to be that forever. So learning how to manage yourself and learning how to manage people's expectations from the get-go, super important. So within communication, you know, your out of office might say, look, there's an average of a response time of 3 to 5 working days, and people might think, good golly, that's ages. But if you've got meetings and you're in development and you're traveling and you really want to sit down and honor a communication, then, you know, be true to you essentially as well. I have multiple spreadsheets, old school, you know, everything on Google Drive. Essentially, people might use the cloud as well, but, you know, backup, you know, so yeah, Google Drive, docs, anything that can be shared. Again, if you're working with an accountant, get a great spreadsheet put together for your monthly expenses. You know, there's lots and lots of different types of accountancy or finance packages, you know, that you can get that share your business bank account. Also, top tip, have a separate account for money's coming in to your current account so that you can measure everything. You know, just use and work with it. Can feel system overload at the beginning, but once you sort your systems out that work for you, it's really, really important. I worked with, for example, like a paper diary for years, and even actually until about 18 months ago, and refused point blank to kind of go on to like a Google Calendar. Others are available, but it changed my life. It changed my life basically, because my life changes so much. It's nigh on impossible to write in pen on paper in a diary. It may also be simple things like wall planners, different notebooks. Maybe you're somebody that likes to run lists down your calendar or in your notebook. And I would say a top tip for prioritizing things to do are essentially like, again, in the beginning, we think we have to say yes to everything, but really trust yourself about whether a meeting, a phone call, or a person can help you. In the beginning, when we say yes to everything, we throw a lot of energy around. And then, you can become discerning. So I don't meet with everybody, and I say no to a lot of things now. I also wouldn't be an affiliate with someone or a program or a practitioner whose work I or one of my team hadn't experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that when you're doing exchanges are great, but also they can keep you and the other person or the other brand playing small, and that's not what you want. And by playing small, what I mean is missing out on opportunities, missing out on professionalizing. So be savvy, talk to people who are doing, kind of what you would like to be doing in a way across industries. Don't just stick to the one that you're in. And essentially remember that you chose this. Sometimes it can be like, oh my God, I can't bear to open up my laptop or look at another thing, or, I haven't put my laptop down. It's like, it really, if you're serious, graft will be involved, and let it be so, because there's nothing better than the feeling of a full day of work and then closing the laptop or the to-do list down for tomorrow, knowing that you did that, you created that was your steam. It's such an important point and to celebrate that every single day, knowing that you are co-creating a universe that works exactly for you. And if it doesn't, circling is back to that idea of patterns we were talking about earlier, then you need a new pattern basically, and honor yourself and allow yourself to be able to do that.
Yes, so much goodness in that answer. Thank you. And I'm sure lots of people who are watching this are going to go and Google how to use numerology in their calendars. What an interesting way of doing it. I love that.
And sorry, just to say, actually, the person who helped me with it is a woman called LRD. And so she's on Instagram, Lara Rose. And so, you can book a session with her basically. And for a small investment, then you can run your calendar in a really intuitive way, actually. Which it kind of, the numerology element for me, it takes the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 out of our thinking. Because if you don't work in corporate anymore, then it doesn't quite work in the same way. And it just means that you have 30 to 30, kind of 31 days, and how you run your diary and that cycle works for you every single 30 to 31 days. And that's very expansive in a developing business environment.
Yes, I think it's so beautiful. And I know that for me personally, coming from a corporate background into my own business, I felt some guilt around not working an 8-hour day, Monday to Friday. So, I've had to work on that, and I've managed to come through that. But I think something like this would take it that one step further.
Totally. And then again, you can personalize it. So for example, those like X days, which are not kind of front facing, actually, they're incredible for me personally for writing and for doubling down. So the outside world might not be hearing from me, but I've got like the post-it notes are out, and the like the highlighters are out, and I'm moving that jigsaw of what I think my instinct, knowledge, kind of information, data, and then I can offer that somewhere. And I kind of, not really secretly, but you'll notice that my Instagram, for example, I use that to test a lot of language and concepts. Whether people are aware of that or not is another thing, but what I'm doing is looking at, what do people expect from me, what have people got comfortable hearing from me, what message are people coming to me for. As I evolve, will that current audience evolve with me, or is it shifting and changing? It is like I would say a big FU to the concept of a popularity contest. Those are your data influencers. Like if you can use
Mm.
social media from that point of view, connection absolutely, community absolutely, and if you're serious about being in service in a mature, professional, meaningful, long-standing way, then have those conversations. It's not that you have to turn up every day in something muchos inspiring. You know, share, acknowledge, converse, be in there as a form of you. Like we literally we're so immature in our use of the internet right now, and in terms of what we're doing. And you know, in 50 years we'll look back and be like, my god, I could have been gathering all this information and I wasn't. What the hell was I thinking? You know, it's we would have paid millions for some of the research and data sets that are available through social media. So
Mm.
savvy, enjoy, you know, again, think like, I'm going into the lab, what's going to happen today? You know, like go, like whatever that equivalent is for you, or you know, like I'm going into the kitchen, or you know, or I'm going into the sewing room. Just allow your life to knit together with those principles.
I love that. Thank you, Gail. And finally, what would you say to somebody who dreams of setting up a business, becoming an entrepreneur, or that CEO that we've talked about?
Well, I would say do it, number one, if it's really yours. And what I mean by that is, right now there's a lot of messages which are do it, you know, essentially, which are, you know, kind of take your instinct, take a hobby and make it into a business, do this and do that, you know, get a bridge job, all these sorts of things, all very, very good advice. Look at where you are and check how it is serving you. Like, are you showing up 100% where you are, or have you checked out? You know, are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling unfulfilled? Is there a level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction? Like, do you want to set up a business because you genuinely want to make a difference and contribute to the world and think that you have a solution to one of the many challenges that are happening? Or is it that you want to check out and just not do what you're doing? The reason I'm presenting those lines of inquiry is that we know if you're alive in business after 2 years of setting up independently, you're probably going to be in it for a good run. You know, even in the 4 years that I've been around, I've watched people come and go, you know, and I can see people who are about to crash and burn as well. I can see people who've kind of overshot, or they've overcomplicated, or you know, there's a rhythm to what they're doing which which is just again, it's inauthentic or out of integrity, you know. And like that can, you know, that's also happens in restauranting. It doesn't matter what the business is. We see that little cafes, bistros, restaurants that open up, they close down. You know, Virgin, was it their red letter experiences doesn't exist anymore. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith gets more popular, Airbnb get more popular, people try and open up similar things, doesn't work, because there's this idea that sometimes we're seeing somebody else make a lot of money and therefore we think we want to do that. So be clear about the driver. Keep like the 4 money pillars as I think of them, you know. So earn, give, save, spend. Earn, give, save, spend. Even if it's 5p off every pound, or 10 cents off the dollar, have that built into your business from the get-go. You know, take care of you, take care of the family, take care of the community. And again, you know, when I first set up, one of the first things that I did, kind of coming out of London 2012 and going into being a freelance producer, was I got in touch with 30 people that I absolutely trusted across a variety of industries that I'd been working with and in. And I went and had tea or lunch with all of them. And I said, at the time, do I look in the back of the Guardian, you know, and and find like another 9-to-5 job, or I'm thinking that there are these elements that I believe I can do much better independently to be in service. And in those 30 conversations, every single person said, please set up independently. And within a month, I had 7 contracts and was working full time and a half. Because I also, so much of it when we start our businesses, it's in our head. We spend a lot of time thinking. I spend a lot of time in my lab. But we can get really stuck. So get out and about, talk to people, make sure it really is yours. And also take the business, the idea for the business, the soul of the business, take that out for a date. Ask it what it wants. What do you want to be? What is it that you want to be born through me? You know, I think it's this. What do you think? What's the 12? What would a 12-month cycle look like? And know that there will always be winter. There will always be winter. There must be winter. There must be winter. You know, we as humans we can't survive in summer full time. So, you know, be truthful, be authentic, be bold. Whenever you feel like there's something you don't want to do because you're resisting it, do what I call the pivot. So go 180, and sometimes you're going to have to force yourself to do a lot of stuff. That will break and interrupt patterns. It will develop courage. And know that, you know, the worst anybody could do is say no. You will get complaints over the years. You will screw up. It will all happen. It will all happen. If you expect it as part of the truth of life, then your business will run all the better for it. You know, fail the best that you can and celebrate that along with the successes, and, you know, make a difference, because we need differences made, but we need differences made in community and collaboration. We don't really need any more isolated business owners. It's just, it doesn't have as much potency as is needed right now. So connectivity, reaching, being in conversation, all of those elements, and take yourself seriously. You know, it's like, it's really easy, and I do this at home some days, it's really easy to get up and throw on the comfies. So then I act like I'm a leisurely CEO when I'm in leisure wear, as it were. Whereas if I'm up and about and dressed, then any email that comes in or phone call, I'll answer it, I'll respond to it. I'll show up for it. Just, you know, again, just take responsibility for all of your energy and showing up, and act like a CEO, not a scrabbling kind of penniless freelancer. And that's a great difference to the mindset.
Yes, thank you, Gail. And I can feel myself sitting up taller as you're speaking. So I hope that that's the impacts that everyone listening has had as well. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
That was really so beautiful, and I'm sure that I and many others who are watching this will go back and watch this video again, because there's just so much gold in it. So I truly appreciate you, and thank you so much for sharing so beautifully with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.